Okay, so the next partition in your digestive tract is the small intestine. So we were talking about the stomach and how the stomach is very acidic. The small intestine cannot stand that acidity, and so the chyme that is in your stomach has to be released in small squirts into the small intestine, where it is then neutralized by the juices that are contributed from the pancreas. So pancreatic juice tends to neutralize the acidic chyme. So if we look at the connection with the stomach, we have a valve, and the stomach connects to the first part of the small intestine called the duodenum. Sometimes people pronounce it duodenum. I think that both of those actually work depending upon I think one's English and one's American. So duodenum is the first part of the small intestine, and it is really important. So the valve is called the pyloric sphincter. This pyloric sphincter is like the anus. Our mouth is also a sphincter. We also have an ileocecal valve, which is also a sphincter, but it's a round valve, right? And it can open and close, and it allows stuff to move from the stomach and into the small intestine. It actually just squirts the chyme into the small intestine. So if we were to look at what this looked like in a diagram, we could look at a diagram of the stomach. And let me zoom in on this a little bit. I have to go to view. For some reason, the controls won't work. Okay. So remember that I said that the stomach has multiple, actually 3 layers of smooth muscle. It has a connective tissue outer surface. The inner is lined with epithelial tissue that includes gastric glands that produce hydrochloric acid and pepsinogen. It also, I didn't mention this, but it also has these folds in it. And that is really important because the stomach allows us to store food. So that is where we store food. We don't store it in the small intestine or the esophagus, right? This is where we store food. So it can expand, and then if we don't eat very big meals, it kind of contracts up, right? So it can expand, they say, up to 2 liters of food and water. So that's like a Pepsi bottle, right? That's quite a bit of stuff. Can expand, and that means that we don't have to eat all the time. We can actually eat a big meal once a day if we had to, right? And that would provide us with enough nutrients and energy. So that doesn't mean, that means we don't have to continually feed, right? We don't have to be grazers. We can just eat 1 big meal or 2 or 3, right? Instead of a bunch of small meals. So this is the pyloric sphincter right here. This is the beginning of your small intestine. This is really important that this valve works properly so that the chyme is not dumped all at once into the small intestine, but it's just squirted in there a little at a time. Okay. So if we look at the digestive properties of the small intestine, we have chemical digestion. Where do these enzymes come from? A lot of them come from the pancreas. So we have pancreatic enzymes. Are produced in the pancreas and then travel via a duct to the small intestine. So this would be the exocrine function. An exocrine gland has ducts. It's not the endocrine function of the pancreas, which is the production of hormones. So pancreatic enzymes are transported via a duct. There's a bunch of them. Some of them have weird names like trypsin, which digests proteins. Some of them, like lipases, digest lipids. We even have a pancreatic amylase, which breaks down maltose into glucose. So this would be carbohydrate digestion. So it digests carbohydrates like sugars. Remember, we did talk about salivary amylase. We also have pancreatic amylases. We also even have nucleases. So nucleases break down DNA, right? The DNA that we take in, we can break it down. So I think that's an A, nucleases. Remember, the ase ending means that it is an enzyme. Okay, so those are transported. So this would be chemical digestion. We also have mechanical digestion, and this is a very strange example of mechanical digestion because it is a chemical that does it, but it's not an enzyme. That's really important. So this is where we have bile. Bile is, you may have vomited enough that you've actually gotten bile from your small intestine up, right? It tends to be yellow, brownish color. It has even a particular taste to it. It also is the reason why our feces tends to be brown. So if your feces are white, then that means that you're not producing bile, or it's not getting into the small intestine. Maybe it's a blocked gallbladder, for example. So bile is produced by the liver, and it is stored in the gallbladder. It mechanically digests fats. So we have what are called fat globules. And bile breaks those down into fat droplets. This increases their surface area, right? So then the lipases can bind and break down it into fatty acids and glycerol, which then can be absorbed through your intestinal wall and go into your body. Okay, so this is mechanical digestion. This is a detergent. It's an emulsifier. So think about like when you're trying to wash a really greasy pan, you can't, the water will not wash it away because the fat is all globbed together. You add a detergent, it breaks down the fat globules into droplets, and then the water is strong enough to rinse it off. Same thing with the bile. It is mechanical, not chemical digestion.